Beyond and hello everyone, my name is Jonathon Dornbush and this is Podcast Beyond episode 636 of our weekly PlayStation show. I'm joined this week by Brian Altano.
Hey!
And Max Scoville.
Greetings and salutations, fellow friends of the computer screen.
Lucy O'Brien unfortunately can't be with us this week because she is very busy on some projects and reviews and such that you'll hear about in the weeks to come. But before we jump into this full week show, for the video version, if you're watching this and if you're listening to this episode, go online to watch this teaser. Our Bloodborne Let's Play isn't quite ready for a full episode reveal, but this week being the 5th anniversary of Bloodborne, we put together a little teaser for you. So let's roll that. My name is Jonathon Dornbush, and I have a confession to make. I've never played Bloodborne. I know. I do host IGN's PlayStation show, Podcast Beyond, but thankfully my co-hosts Lucy O'Brien, Max Scoville, and Brian Altano all love the game, so they're going to coach me through my first ever playthrough of Bloodborne. I'm already scared, but you should definitely stay tuned for our first episode. Hope you enjoyed that very brief sneak preview at the Let's Play we have coming. We recorded quite a bit a few weeks ago before we all went into our shelter-in-place work from home modes, but it was a lot of fun to put together, and I think the episodes are going to turn out super, super well. We're just not quite ready to release it, especially because we don't know when we're going to record next, so we're going to figure that out first. But we will be talking about Bloodborne more since it is the 5th anniversary of that game that I have maybe played a little bit now. But before we jump into the news, quickly just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been joining in for the live shows that we did last week. I think my dog is barking at the goose behind me, which is fun. Thank you for joining us if you watch along live or listening to them after the fact. We hope you're all safe and well at home if you can be. Obviously, understand not everyone can be due to some work obligations and whatnot, but we hope you're safe, we hope you're well, and we hope this show can bring you a little bit of fun over the weeks while we're all at home. So in the meantime, let's kick off with PlayStation news. The first thing I wanted to bring up is the breaking news that Brian, you put into the run of show. The PlayStation 5 website updated.
That's right. We're getting there, baby. We're getting closer. Lots of news there. They confirmed that their PlayStation 5 is gonna definitely still be the PlayStation 5, and the year is still gonna be 2020. So
huge
back to you, Jonathon.
What a thrill!
Yes.
No, this is like the most. This was the most like nothing update, but it's something because it's like all of this is building towards something, hopefully, hypothetically, eventually. And so, even something this tiny and minute is hope that they're putting the microphone on a little bit, and that we're hopefully going to start getting more and more and more. Until then, it's not. It's that gif of it's nothing.
Yeah, it was a weird, funny thing. We actually had that story pop up in our internal Slack that we were talking about for news, and people were like, "Should we write this up?" Because they vaguely updated the text on the PS5 website. But that's the level of PS5 news we have right now. I did want to mention sort of the one substantial actual bit of PS5 news we got in between shows. Of course, we covered Mark Cerny's in-depth tech talk about the PS5 from last week that was originally meant to be a GDC talk. So if you didn't check out that episode, you can go listen to last week's to figure out all our thoughts on that very complex discussion. But after the fact, Sony updated their PlayStation blog post about this, not once, but twice, to clarify some of the backward compatibility confusion that stemmed from Cerny's discussion.
What was unclear about Mark Cerny's 50-minute long explanation? What could possibly leave room for clarification?
Of course, no. It was very buttoned up and to the point and nothing uncertain for fans. No, there was some scuttlebutt that we were even having internally about whether or not Cerny was discussing the fact that all of the PS4's library would be backward compatible and only 100 games would be available at launch, or if only 100 games would be available in the PS5's boost mode from PS4, or some other combination of maybe we'll only actually get to play 20 games backward compatible. The update that the PlayStation blog actually put out was, with all of the amazing games in PS4's catalog, we've devoted significant efforts to enable our fans to play their favorites on PS5. We believe that the overwhelming majority of the 4,000 PS4 titles will be playable on PS5. We're expecting backward compatible titles will run at a boosted frequency on PS5 so that they can benefit from higher or more stable frame rates and potentially higher resolutions. We're currently evaluating games on a title-by-title basis to spot any issues that need adjustment from the original software developers. In his presentation, Mark Cerny provided a snapshot into the top 100 most played PS4 titles, demonstrating how well our backward compatibility efforts are going. We have already tested hundreds of titles and are preparing to test thousands more as we move toward launch. We will provide updates on backward compatibility along with much more PS5 news in the months ahead. Stay tuned.
So that's kind of worrisome, honestly. Like
Yeah.
we dug into it a little bit last week, but it sort of makes me think that that fans are going to be finding problems in these games that weren't caught initially by Sony's in-house developers and testers. Because if they're going through on a case-by-case basis, I don't know if that's how the Xbox hardware works, because their message was very clear of just like, all the old games work here now. Whereas on PlayStation, they're like, well, it seems like they basically prioritize the most played ones, the most popular ones, which is good. It's a good start. And definitely better than the complete lack of backwards compatibility we've had on PS4. But it makes it seem like, to me, you're going to play some like, sort of niche game 2 years from now and find a bunch of technical hiccups in it. And then you're going to ask them to patch them out. And they're going to say like, we can't justify the time and resources to do that. Like, I have the PlayStation Now app. I don't know where, I might have stuck that in the folder. That might be just like pushed all the way down the train from all the games I've been playing before it. Because it's something I don't really use a lot. But it's also like they've changed up the languaging on that a little bit. When it started, it was just like a streaming thing. And now you can download some games. And so I think they really need to scream that from the rooftops too. And not just for people like us and people who listen to the show, but like, consumer Carl or whatever, like the guy that walks into a store.
Yeah, I mean, like right now you can download PS4 and PS2 games and play them offline, and that's not really a thing that I think they're shouting about enough, because I've thought about, man, I would love to, revisit some PS2 games. I don't have the chance to. I can, I guess, download these remasters of the Final Fantasy games when they're on sale, but Game Pass is going to get literally every remastered Final Fantasy game from the past like 2 generations, so why wouldn't I just wait to go play it there?
Right.
Yeah, I think they need to be boasting what they have more, and they almost seem like reticent and scared to talk about the good things they have until
I think also just like naming wise, they're like PlayStation Now, PlayStation View, PlayStation Plus, and PSN are all sort of like they all sound kind of the same. They all have blue logos of various shapes, and there's just that little logo in there. And Game Pass is like it's like a glowing neon sign with like arrows shooting around it, and it rolls off the tongue. It's totally straightforward and self-explanatory, and like I don't know what Sony's version of that is,
Also, have you guys seen the Xbox Game Pass Twitter account?
No, is it super lewd?
It's like a meme posting account. Like it is
Really?
It's like a weird teen hip account, but it's also like very positive and tries to like be nice to everyone, and it weirdly works as like a social voice, but it's specifically just for Game Pass.
Okay,
and like they're at least trying to build a voice for it, whereas like you're saying, PlayStation stuff just kind of bleeds together.
Not only is it great value, it's got an online personality as well. Come for the games, stay for the humor and the kindness. Vibes, as it's known.
Can't wait till PS Now is on TikTok.
Oh.
But yeah, jumping a little bit into that, because obviously we can say about PlayStation services until they tell us more about PS5. What do you guys think about if those 2 games turn out to be the PlayStation Plus lineup for next month?
I think it's great. I'm not like Uncharted 4 is not my favorite Uncharted, but people are stuck inside right now, and giving them like a gorgeous, like swashbuckling 22-hour 4K video game is like a pretty good look. That's like one of their flagship first party titles. It's one of the sort of defining titles of this console generation for PlayStation. And so like, that's huge, my gut reaction was like, they're opening the door here to like put this on PC eventually, but
I was kind of itching to replay that anyway. And I honestly, like in spite of having this big, robust library of digital games, I oftentimes can't remember, like, did I borrow a physical copy of that? And I've totally done that thing where I'm like, I'm going to play one of my favorite games ever, Metal Gear Solid 5. And I'm like, crap, I gave that to somebody. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, I don't know if I have Uncharted 4 or not. And I was like totally itching to replay that. partially because I want to see how good it looks on my new TV. And there was that Kotaku article about Last of Us 2 crunch, and Jason Schreier was like, buy my book, but also here's some tidbits about like the detail in Uncharted 4. And I was like, they did work very hard on that game. I want to shoot the rice bag and see rice come out of it. Like there's all these details in there that I didn't mess with. Like I'm kind of, I don't know. But as far as that being the full lineup of like, something, what is it, like $60 a year?
I think right now it's 60. Yeah.
I mean, that's Dirt Rally, everybody.
Yeah.
Get rowdy.
Yeah.
Cars.
No, sorry, Brian, go ahead.
No, that's it.
I was gonna say it's funny how the conversation for PlayStation Plus from like, I don't know, even a year or two ago, there was that month where it was like Bloodborne and Ratchet and Clank and 4 other games, but it was like, oh my god, this is amazing. We have all this stuff in March on top of all the great games coming. I think that was 2017 which was a great year anyway. Or
I mean, they launched Rocket League on there.
Yeah.
They launched what was Ollie Ollie, that skateboarding game, and it was on like 3 different platforms when it came out. Like I don't know, I think it's good that they're having like AAA stuff, but at the same time, when it launched, it was like, hey, here's something for your Vita, your PS3, and your PS4, and then gradually 2 of those things kind of dried up, and they were like, here's a thing, maybe 2 things for your thing that you're using still. I don't know why they're not putting smaller PSVR games on there if they're trying to support that system at all.
Yeah, especially leading up to an inevitable PSVR 2. Just give people free games. But yeah, I don't want to miss the irony of it, because I was just thinking about it, that like they're not putting as many resources into this while Xbox is into Xbox Live and Game Pass. But they used to be, because they were the ones who were in second place, or they were the ones needing to prove themselves. And like PlayStation Plus was a great way to engender goodwill with audiences that they kind of have just kind of let go by the wayside.
Well, yeah, in terms of like backwards compatibility in general, like Sony's gone on multiple times to be like, it's not really a priority, and also outright stating that it's something that like people want, but that they don't actually really use, which I don't necessarily agree with. Like, I think that like maybe let the consumer decide that. Like, I think it's like, I didn't use backwards compatibility on my PS4 because they didn't put it there really. And so like this entire generation, maybe I would have been playing PS2 games or PS3 games, but I didn't really have that option. And so I do think that there's like in lieu of like proper backwards compatibility, I think that like putting out collections and stuff like that works really well, but we didn't really even see a ton of those. Companies like Capcom and Konami are good with stuff like that, Square Enix as well, but you don't see that all the time. And so, yeah, I would just like everything in one place. I think that they're ramping up. I think they'll figure out a way to get the messaging across. I think it's just been sort of like the way they've been trickling out news this year, or lack thereof, has been frustrating to say the least. And I really do hope that all of this gets sort of laser beamed into one specific spot soon, and we get to start drumming up some significant excitement for this. I'm still like of the mindset that I don't really know if next gen's going to happen in the same time frame. Like, everything feels weird. Like they just announced this morning that Wonder Woman 1984 got moved to August, and I still can't picture going to a movie theater in August based on the current climate of what we're living in. Nor can I picture going to a midnight launch for a console hardware at Best Buy this fall. I mean, maybe things will be like miraculously better, but I think that like there's so much involved with all of it. I also, like, not to get dark, but I think I'm kind of anticipating a bunch of 2020's biggest games will get delayed, which is weird because a lot of them already were. I can't imagine, like, just to show you on a microcosmic level of what it's been like for us as like a video company over like the last week, to suddenly pivot to have everybody working from home on their individual internet setups, on their home laptops and stuff like that. We are not making a 4K 60 frames per second open world video game at IGN. We are making radio shows with webcams. And so even that has had enough technical hurdles to frustrate all of us to some degree. And this is not really me saying this to proclaim that we have it hard, because we don't. We're lucky to even be working. But there are a lot of developers that went from working on, basically like perfectly lit 4K monitors running on giant engines and working in animation studios and mocapping and working with sound designers, and now they're remote desktopping into their companies.
Yeah.
And
when you do performance capture for a cutscene, you don't do each individual character separately and then comp them together. Like maybe a little bit, but for the most part, that's a bunch of people in ping pong ball suits in a giant room. Like,
and so you
Troy
gotta
Baker's living room must be a nightmare.
I totally agree. I think that anything that we were anticipating to get released this spring will probably still be on track. I think a lot of that stuff is mostly just in QA at this point. But anything that was like looking for like summer or fall, that probably still needs a few nuts and bolts. I mean, so many problems can arise, and without having everybody in the room to sort of target them and grab them at the same time. Like, I mean, you have again, not to talk about us, but if you look at the way we were, Max and I last Monday went into the office to shoot a video. No one was in the office. We left early. That afternoon, they essentially announced shelter in place for our entire city, which was then followed by our entire state. And so we basically did like a Nickelodeon toy run for our chargers and mice and cables and went home, and that was it. And I think a lot of developers, they're not working with home computer software. They're not working with technology in the same way that they have in the office. They don't have sound booths. Most people don't have this kind of stuff at home. This is my, like, one of my shelves I have in my living room that I just drag to the center of the room and cover in toys in the morning to build a fake set and then tear apart at the end of the day so my kid doesn't knock it over. Like, I really think that video games are going to get delayed this year. I think that like big ones, like, I don't know about The Last of Us. I don't know about Ghost of Tsushima, but I think that like apparently CD Projekt Red has been able to pivot and work from home based on what they're saying, but like that remains to be seen, honestly.
It's going to be really studio by studio, case by case basis, I think, that we're going to see. And I agree that the video game industry hasn't like quite seen the impact of it yet, but I think will. And I think we'll see it in ways that we don't even know. Like the reality of it is there are games that are going to be coming out this fall that have not been announced.
Yeah.
And, major companies don't have much on the slate. And we know that like Ubisoft has Watch Dogs Legion, Rainbow Six Quarantine, and Gods and Monsters that are set for some debut allegedly in later 2020. We don't know if those will move. We don't know if they have any other games. I mean, everyone's expecting an unannounced Creed.
You think a game called Quarantine is going to sell a lot?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, can't imagine with that Rainbow Six team. They're probably like, hey, let's go back to Siege and put new operators in there.
That's kind of like a quarantine, If you're under siege, you're just like, there's quarantine, but people outside want to kill you.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it.
Jonathan, I think you're totally right. Like it's the games that we don't know about yet. It's the launch games. It's like the flagship launch titles for PS5 and Xbox Series X that haven't been revealed, that we haven't seen, that we have no understanding of, that are deep in development right now, that we're anticipating this year to work on them. Yeah.
So and that's why backward compatibility is going to really matter.
Anecdotally, one of the sort of hurdles I've been dealing with is I'm still making videos on my laptop from when I started at IGN 5 years ago, and I was supposed to get an upgrade from the IT department, but I kept putting that off. And then this all happened, and I emailed the guy, and I was like, "Any chance you guys could give me a new computer?" And he was like, "We were waiting. We're going to wait a couple months for that anyway." But like, I heard from Apple that there may be like supply interruptions due to all this happening, and that's for a known quantity, like a MacBook. Like those are things that theoretically are off the shelf, but like. Chinese factories have been shutting down. Like people have not been working. Nobody on the planet, for the most part, has been working their normal schedule, and that's going to affect things. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you also have companies like Amazon are specifically not stocking or shipping what are deemed to be non-essential items. Now, obviously, Amazon is silly, so there's a lot of crap in there that falls to the wayside of these compartments that they've deemed essential. But if these consoles were to launch this month, I don't think that would be something you'd be able to purchase. Like, I think even getting, like, there is stuff like Nintendo Switch right now is sold out everywhere to the point that it's being upcharged upwards to $500 or more, because second party or secondhand markets have jumped on a need for this. And I don't know if that's coinciding with sort of like a pause in production, but for whatever reason, this is a immensely popular current gen video game hardware that is essentially impossible to buy for retail price right now without getting completely gouged or ripped off. And even then, like, you're buying secondhand through somebody that's maybe been coughing on it all day. Who knows?
I mean, remember there was like a shortage of a certain amiibo a couple years ago because one shipping container fell into the ocean. Do you remember that? Did I dream that?
No. It was I think it got robbed, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, it was like a gigantic, I think it was like a Taiwanese shipping boat got robbed.
Good God.
Which probably sucked for the robbers because they were probably looking for like phones and they got like Rosalina.
Yeah, right. But that was totally a thing where they were like, it was like a specific shipment that got disrupted.
Yeah.
It's a very large boat, but that is one boat, you know? We're looking at
the entire industry. Yeah.
So
side note, you do got to know that there was one was like super excited and was like, oh man, I've been missing those.
He was like, my kid loves Frozen.
Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting too. I think we're going to be unpacking this stuff a lot, even once we're all back in the office and back in the studio recording normal episodes. Like, I do think we're going to be talking about the effects of this for months, if not years to come. And it's going to be very interesting to have those conversations. But to move on to something that I think we can talk about a little more substantive, at least for the moment, is a game that you both have already played. Max, you know, not quite to the end of it yet, but you're getting there. And I've maybe played a little bit because as we're recording today, it is the 5th anniversary of Bloodborne. And so I am deeming Bloodborne conversation allowed before the end of the episode. Of course, like I mentioned at the beginning, we started our Let's Play series. I have played a bit of the game, and I won't say up to what or how far times I died. Don't want to spoil any of that stuff. I will say, just to give a top-down overview, I really, really loved what I played so far. I'm getting why you guys love this game so much.
Have you jumped back in? Because we left that weekend and you were like, oh, I'll grind a little bit or I'll explore. But like now it's like,
so
can't do that. Don't do that. Don't go too far.
Yeah, I did for that weekend and then stopped and honestly haven't gone back since, and it's been tough, but I really don't want to like ruin what we can record.
Did it get the hooks in you?
It did. That weekend, my girlfriend was actually gone that weekend, and so it was one of those things where I was like, "Oh, there's a new game coming out this week. I should probably play it." I'm just gonna play 4 more hours of grinding in Bloodborne and just getting used to this whole environment. And I found like 1 or 2 side areas and fought like a giant rat in a sewer, and was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And so I've had that urge to go back, and I've been fighting it, which has been tough, especially since we're home now. But it's obviously. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's got that sort of thing where you when you see a screenshot of it, it makes you want to jump back into it, which like very very few games make me do that. Stuff like if I see a screenshot of Wind Waker, I'm like, I want to be in that boat, you know. Same with like something like Ocarina of Time, Resident Evil 4, even like Tetris. You're like, I want to be playing that right now.
I want to be with those bricks. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So I really really enjoyed have been fighting the urge to go back to it, but I did want to obviously with this being the 5th anniversary, because I have noticed obviously a lot of our audience has either jumped in because of the Let's Play series we're doing, or has been like, I'm so excited to see you guys be playing through this. And I did want to ask Max, where have you gotten to since we last spoke a bit in detail about it?
I'm basically done. Like okay. I have so the whole thing is you get to the end of that game and there's a point where basically there's like maybe 1 or 2 bosses depending on what you do. And I've been sort of looking at, exploring on my own and getting surprised by stuff, but occasionally checking out wikis to be like, you don't want to mess anything up. And one big thing that's really weird and confusing is that when you finish the game, you automatically get kicked into New Game Plus. And the DLC, the Old Hunters, is incredibly difficult under normal circumstances, but under New Game Plus, people are just like, I can't, except for Brian, who's done it like 3.5 times or whatever. But I was pretty much like, you know what, I really want to experience this, so I'm going to go in there and I'm going to grind and mess around. And so I've gone all the way through the DLC, and then there's 2 bosses in that which I can't get past. So I have four bosses total that I need to fight, and then I will have done all the things. And then there's the Chalice dungeons, which don't scale with New Game Plus, so I'm totally okay with saving those for later. But like it's weird to be like the end is that close. It's just it's that close, but there's 4 gigantic men who want to kill me standing in that small space. So like I don't know. God, I love it so dearly.
Does it feel weird to be like, are you one of those people who's like, I don't want it to end? Like, are you gonna stave off fighting these bosses or beating them because you don't want, or does that not matter as much to you because you can jump back?
I don't platinum games. I kind of want to platinum this game. And it's like definitely doable. Like I was kind of counting the trophies and I was like, well, that's that. I was like, oh, I just have one more thing for that. And I went and did it. And I was like, bing. And I was like, okay, well, that's only 5 things left to do. And it's like, there's a platinum for the main game, but not for the DLC. And I'm like, I've seen all the DLC. I've seen all the stuff in there. I don't really need to fight the awful bad boys that are still left.
Yeah, you do.
Do I? I guess I do.
Yeah, it's super.
Yeah, you do.
It's not easy, but
come
it's
into
completely.
my game. Come into my game and come help.
I can do that.
Like a ring ding ding a ding and come in there and kick their asses for me.
Which fruit did your town get? I got peaches.
I got blood apples.
I was thinking about how I believe I played the first time I ever played Bloodborne was at TGS 2014.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so there was a PlayStation booth. That was also the first time I ever did PSVR. And so TGS is already a delirious show as a non-Japanese speaking English American guy who, flew across the country or flew across the world, is jet lagged and is basically covering an international trade show in a different language, and also like navigating a foreign culture and stuff like that. And I remember sitting down and being like, what is this? And they're like, oh, it's like all in Japanese, and there's like a little placard that says like, oh, the FromSoft's new horror game. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I remember like playing, and in my brain it's like a different street, but it's like a variation of the first street with 50 dudes. And I remember just like being like, what is this? Like everything is horrible and screaming at me and wet. And I remember just like I had the biggest smile on my face, and I'm just like running full speed down the street and trying to navigate all this stuff. And I died like almost instantly. Got kicked to what at the time was like a 4-minute loading screen, and then kind of got up and was like, that was awesome. What was that?
Well, then I remember when it came out, like we have a video from this very show where like you kind of noped out, like you weren't into it, and then you went back. And I did the same thing. Like, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of it reminds me of dating somebody that you've known for a long time, but when you first met them, you were like not into them. Mm-hmm. Like I remember, like, I don't know, like people I dated like after high school and being like, oh God, I totally remember you in high school. That's weird, like that's just it's a completely. I remember reading like Brandon Tyrell's like preview of Bloodborne, and the first street is it's very hard. You go in there and it just beats your ass, and you really got to learn how to be very good at it. I was like, I'm not playing that game. I suck at games. I don't want to get good at this game. And now I'm like, I don't want to play other games because I like this one too much. I don't know. It's such a just. I started reading a bunch of H.P. Lovecraft. Because I wanted to kind of dig into it. And it's amazing how, like, first of all, that game is really good at borrowing elements and ideas, but being transformative with them. And it's funny reading Lovecraft because I'm like, oh, that's totally where this came from. But
right,
like Bloodborne did it. It's kind of cool little remix. I mean, it's what like Tarantino does. But there's some there are some specific like call outs that are so just dead on. Like, and I was like, oh, you managed to like interpret this text from 1927 or whatever and turn it into an action video game, which is like,
mm-hmm.
so I like it so much more than, I think honestly the translation of things in books into a game is so much more exciting to me than seeing like, let's turn this game into a movie, or let's turn this comic book into a movie, because you're taking the most like simple concept of just arranging words into something that someone's imagination has to conjure up, and then creating an interactive space based on that. Like, I don't
You
know.
also you don't have like a visual identity to rely already established, nor do you have like something storyboarded. Like, so no one's sitting there being like, "That's wrong." Like when they when they first showed off like the Witcher TV show, and everybody was like, that's not how it's supposed to be in the game, and they're like, it's based on the books, and then the conversation died down a little bit. That's all it took. But yeah, I totally agree. Like, same deal.
But like conversely, like reading the Witcher books, they're kind of, after playing the game, there are things in there where you're like, oh, that one sentence got turned into a mechanic. Like,
right.
there's a part
Yeah.
where like, oh, he started putting, necrophage oil on his silver blade to go fight vampires or whatever, and it's like, oh, you made that into like, that's a thing you do in a menu, and then it's a meter on your screen. It's like, yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you're good. I was just gonna say, yeah, even the small bits of it I've seen, like obviously Eldritch horror is a thing that isn't is in other games and is present and adapted in games and movies and everything. But why do you guys feel like the world of Bloodborne has been so memorable to people this generation? Is like still something we talk about is so idiosyncratic outside of most other games.
I mean, the thing that I always say is that it feels like an actual place, in that things are placed accordingly to the way they sort of would be in real life. And I don't mean monsters and stuff like that. I mean like doorways and like leaves and stuff sort of just like thrown up against a wall, and like metal pushed in a corner, like mangled crates and stuff like that. Just the way the pots and just like everything about the game feels like an actual, like somebody painstakingly created an actual space based on a real environment or something lived in. It's also it's a sort of consistently haunting game that nudges you to become more and more powerful in it and understand it and learn it more. And so it does this amazing thing that even the most skilled expert players, that they are consistently still caught by surprise by things, or they forget about a jump scare, or they forget about a certain attack, a transformation. It's also can be played and approached in so many different ways every single time someone's playing it. Like, I love God of War. It's one of my favorite games of all time. There's tons of customization in that game, but it's ultimately still mostly about Kratos and his son traversing from start to finish through the story. And like you'll check out screenshots of Bloodborne where a character is holding a weapon you didn't know existed, wearing a costume you didn't know you could wear, and fighting an enemy in a way you didn't even think was possible. And I think it's that sort of like intangible combination of things that all come together to create something that is really unlike anything else. And I talked about it early this year. I went like looking for more games to scratch that itch, and I played a bunch and ultimately settled back on Bloodborne because it was like, I was like in a weird dark funk this year. I felt like I started off the year being like, maybe instead of just like forcing myself to go head first into a bunch of creative projects, I can just sort of take it easy and relax. And then started feeling guilty about that. And I was like, well, I need something. Like I need to do something. I need to feel like I'm doing something. And then jumped into Bloodborne and just kept going and going and going. And then realizing like, oh, there's all these parts of this I haven't seen or haven't done. And there's all this lore, and there's, and it got me reading Junji Ito, and then, Max is reading Lovecraft, and like it reconnected me with a bunch of like horror movies that I was, probably going to watch anyway, but still it gave me a good sort of basis. And then I platinumed it, and all of a sudden I was like, like this is pretty much the best way to experience video games this year, was like to drag me out of this funk. Max and I did a video years ago for Up at Noon about like how Max used the game to sort of battle depression and seasonal depression and anxiety and stuff like that. And I think there's something there. Like, I think it's punishing and brutal, but when you kick its ass, it's so damn rewarding, and it's so cool. Like, it just feels so awesome.
Yeah, there's something about, first of all, it's a horrible place to go. So if you're in like if you're in bad spirits normally, and you get in there and it's just, things are shrieking at you, and it's just god awful, and you're like, you kind of come out of it and you're like, it could be worse. But yeah, I mean, I like it in the same way that I like spicy food, or just things with strong, like scotch, like things with those strong flavors where you're just like, oh, what is that? What's going on there? And it's like, I don't know. As far as what makes it special, like the environment is definitely kind of complex, and it folds in on itself in a way that is simultaneously video gamey but also believable. But what I love about how it tells its own story is that it is it's brief. Like it is, brevity is the soul of wit, as the saying goes. And even like there are notes scattered around, but in every other game it's like it's a whole email chain you got to read, or it's like, oh, you've got to collect all of the voice recordings, and it's some guys being like, oh, I don't know if I'm feeling well, and you got to hear this guy like yammer on, and it's like that's great, but that's not really good storytelling. Like the amount of things the amount of things you can kind of learn about Bloodborne by just kind of like observing the world around you, which you should be doing because there's inevitably going to be 15 things around every corner that will kick your ass in a heartbeat. But to have this like this brevity and this nuance where you pick up like a small note and it's like it looks like a haiku or a tweet, and you're like, the hell are they talking about? And it leaves you with a question. It doesn't just over explain itself to you. It's not just the entire notes of world building just splattered out there. It's and it's I think also like it manages to never devalue itself. Like when you find a collectible in that game or like an item, you cherish it, and you can, it can be like a regular thing, like a blood vial or something, but there'll be this little glowing thing on your map, and you're like, oh, I should go see what that is, and you pick it up, and you're like, well, I needed this, and it's like it makes you always, double check that, it could be like a pair of pants or like a hat, or maybe it's like a saw blade that turns into a hammer or whatever, and you're like, okay, well, I'm glad I came down this weird roundabout path to this little glowing thing I saw in the distance. And it just from moment to moment stuff like that, like there are definitely parts where it kind of like it does sort of bottleneck, and it can be a little bit tedious, but in all of the moment to moment things of going from just, I've never had so much like, gratification of like opening a door in a game, like the process of flipping a lever and then going around a corner and being like, I just found a shortcut. Like I see where I am now, which is something that I think you have that in real life, where if you get lost in a weird neighborhood you don't know, and you take like a bunch of weird turns, and you come out and you suddenly know where you are, and you're like, oh, I'm over here. That's where it is.
Aside from even just the reward of like opening a shortcut, there are physical doors in that game where the hunter puts his hands or her hands on them and pushes, and they just like creak and dust falls out, and it takes a minute, and it's like, it's awesome. It opens up this vista to something new. It's also a specifically interesting game right now because it is about essentially a plague that is forcing people indoors, and by traversing these towns and cities and places that are mostly abandoned, you hear people coughing, and you hear like people clearing their throats, and there's a lot of stuff like that like we're on kind of high alert for right now. And so maybe it's not the escapism you're looking for specifically, but I do think it's oddly prescient that like this is the 5-year anniversary of this game, and almost to the day, and here we are, like
we don't have any like special blood to make us better at kicking ass though.
Not yet.
No,
maybe we will.
We'll get there. That's what
we
that
don't have
movie
wolves
Bloodshot's
everywhere
about,
either.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna go down to the
wrap
Home
up
Depot, and I'm just gonna glue a bunch of farm equipment together. I'm gonna make a leaf rake that turns into a snow shovel. It's gonna be badass.
So yeah, happy birthday, Bloodborne.
Yeah, it's the next year with the Let's Play series, but we'll get to that soon enough, I promise. But I'm very excited to jump. Brian, like it scratches a specific itch. Not being able to scratch that itch has been really tough. Yep. But I'm excited to go back to it.
It's also, and I don't want to spoil too much, you're good at it. Like you had us like clapping and cheering because it was you're legit good at that game, and that's really cool to see. Like
appreciate it.
I was not that I was expecting you would be bad at the game, but the game's just incredibly hard, and so it could go either way. And watching you jump in and sort of just like pick it up pretty quickly, and like once you start pulling off like dodge rolls and stuff like that, I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, it was
also
a lot of fun. Oh yeah.
I wanted to give a quick shout out to we actually don't eat pizza in the video, but Escape from New York's the company that we got pizza for the video, and they have been sending pizza to healthcare workers all over the Bay Area ever since this COVID thing started. And so you probably won't make it out here for a long time because traveling's down and Airbnb is basically non-existent and hotels are closed. But if you ever make it to the Bay Area and you're looking for some East Coast style pizza, those guys do good work, and they're doing wonderful stuff for healthcare professionals right now. So shout out to them.
And they're named after the movie that inspired Solid Snake.
Yeah. See? There it is.
Yeah. That's kind of a fitting pizza brand to be eating on a Bloodborne, because that's also about somebody going into a weird city where things have gone sideways and a lot of things try to kill.
Yep.
It's perfect, and hopefully we'll be eating it. Yeah, all the episodes to come.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I did want to ask Max. Before we recorded you'd mentioned you had a Beyond dream.
Oh yeah, this is incredibly weird. We were talking about this before we started recording, that none of us are sleeping very well because it's nightmare scenario out there. But I had E3 is canceled, but apparently E3 stress dreams are not, and my subconscious did not know about that. So I had this bizarre, incredibly vivid dream that Jonathan, you and I were recording videos at E3, and we were shooting in this what's that weird dream room from Twin Peaks with the red curtains?
Yeah,
that's like the Persona one, the Velvet.
Yeah, the Velvet Room. I'm mixing all my names.
We were basically in like a lower budget version of that, which somewhere between that and a hotel banquet room, but with weird gaudy blood red drapes. And we were shooting a video together, like a convo, and the video was supposed to be, it was for Beyond, and it was supposed to be which PlayStation game do you want either a reboot or a sequel to that doesn't have the letter O in the title? And I was like, Metal Gear Solid has an O. And then I was like, aha,
Uncharted.
Metal Gear. Yeah, well, I mean, it was just, and then I was like, Ape Escape.
That was what I was gonna say.
Yeah, right.
But
then we got interrupted, and somebody was watching someone was watching the video, and they were like, actually, this video is sponsored by Ape Escape, and they're announcing a new Ape Escape. So can you do a different one? And I was like, we're not supposed to know that. That's great. So I hope. I mean,
that's not a nightmare. That sounds like a fun time.
We had to keep recording it though. Everything was going wrong. The mics were broken. I don't know.
And Daxter.
Yeah, honestly, that's like a really stupid prompt, because most video game titles don't have O's in them, or it's easy to think of one that doesn't.
I would love, if we're allowed to fly to the LA Convention Center in June and just host a video in front of it and be like, E3 is here, and it's what let's take a look inside, and you go inside, it's just a giant. Wow, there's not a lot of. I don't think they'll let us do that.
I'd love to do 28 Days Later E3 edition, where it's just waking up and going to LA Convention Center, and there's just nothing there, and it's where are all the games? Where are they?
There's still going to be a Real Gamer shirt though on sale in that convention, even though we all won't be there.
You know what we should do for E3 this year that we did? Well, I guess this won't work for PlayStation, but last year we did live reactions to the press conferences from the year before for Microsoft and Xbox, or Microsoft and Nintendo. I wonder if there's something we can do. It'd be cool if we did commentary over a classic PlayStation E3, the one where they just legit knocked it out the park, the really, really awesome one with God of War from a couple years ago.
I mean, honestly, this would be, several. Let us know in the comments if you do this at some point. But honestly, every presentation from this generation, good and bad, is worth looking back on, because they were all so important or strange. impactful in certain ways, like that God of War one, like the strange final one they did, like the original Here's How You Trade Games, like all of them, the Final Fantasy VII Remake reveal, all of them have been important in a different way.
Yep, and I'm sure there's a bunch of them that had details in them that never actually came to fruition. Like I always talk about, Max and I watched the Nintendo 3DS reveal video where Reggie Fils-Aimé was like, to watch the movie Avatar, you have to get expensive sunglasses and spend $17 on a ticket, but soon you'll be able to watch it on a 3DS. And like 3D movies never came to 3DS. Like I want to go back to the beginning of this generation and see what sort of like stuff that they were talking about that they were promising would be the next big thing. I feel like with Sony, a lot of it, they kind of stuck the landing on a lot of stuff. You know, was Wonder Swan this or Wonder Book? Was that this generation? Yeah.
Ooh, no.
What did that follow?
I can't remember.
That came like that came in a press conference right after something where everyone was totally hyped, and then it was just great news, everyone! You can now read a book with your PlayStation Move controllers, and J.K. Rowling's in there.
Yep.
I'm gonna look it up.
I mean, we can theoretically just stream those, right? Because they're not like it's not like a copyrighted. We should do like Mystery Science E3 or something.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I'd be down for that. Let us know. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, let's watch some classic PlayStation E3 stuff and do commentary over it, because we're not getting an E3 this year, and we sure as hell aren't getting a PlayStation E3.
Extreme.
Yeah, I'm down to do. I guess we've made a.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. We throw an idea out there into the ether, and people are like, "Do it," you know.
Yeah. So yeah, let us know in the comments if you want us to do that, and also let us know what PlayStation franchise without series.
Without a no, it's Uncharted. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's got to be Uncharted. Go ahead.
No, in Europe, it's actually Uncharted. It's spelled O-U.
With that joke, I think we'll wrap it up. Briefly, just to our segment. Memory card, of course, is our weekly segment where you, the viewers and listeners, write in your funny, weird, wacky, strange, whatever memories of your PlayStation and gaming life in general. We read them on the show. We have a lot of great ones, but please keep sending them to beyond@ign.com with the subject line memory card, and we'll read them on the show each week. If you guys have read this one on a show I wasn't on, stop me, but this one comes from Christopher, who wrote in and said, Beyond. So I finally finished school and got a big boy job in my field of study. I was still living at home with my mom, dad, and 2 brothers. I had good company and free food. It was a good setup. That summer, though, my parents decided to leave me and my older home alone for a few weeks while they went on vacation with my little brother. And what does a young adult do in this situation? That's right, he buys a PS3 and Metal Gear Solid 4. I had been waiting on a time when I could buy that chubby console and smuggle it into the house. My parents were not very keen on us spending too much time gaming, so I figured if my parents asked about it when they were back home, I'd Jedi mind trick them and tell them we've had this thing for a while. I'm sure that would have worked. Anyways, I bought it on my way to work, so I had to bring the PS3 into work with me, but it was Friday, so I would have had the whole weekend to game. I kept it on my desk right next to me, looking at it and daydreaming about sitting at home in my basement with just me and my beautiful new console. When I finally got home and opened the door, I was stunned. There were people and food and drinks everywhere. Apparently, when your parents leave, you throw a house party, which is what my older brother did. I wasn't going to let this stop my night's plans, though. I said my hellos quickly, ducked into the basement, and set up my new console. The symphonic tones of my PS3 startup filled the room, and I was in another plane of existence. I started playing MGS4, and all of the debauchery surrounding me disappeared. It was just me and this grizzled old man in his skin-tight camo outfit. I sat and played for hours. The party went on around me. Nothing could get me up from the couch, not even the one guy who was passed out in the bathroom, blocking the door from the inside. Every now and then I would notice my brother and some of his friends just watching Old Snake's perfectly sculpted backside as he did the strangest, borderline inappropriate crawl across the war zone. It was incredible. Every now and then I think about that night and that crawl and smile. P.S. Shout out to Tom, middle name Rondolfo Marks, who recommended Goose Game. Seeing my cute wife laugh maniacally as she terrorized a child was both surprising.
God,
I love all the guesses for Tom Marks' middle name. Rondolfo is probably the best one so far.
Is great. And just to wrap it up, we have also that one thing, which I'm going up as I wait for time. Here we go. This one comes in from Jay, who wrote in, you can go to IGN.com with your that one, which is essentially the one thing in a video game that you love that stuck with you and made it one of your favorite, whether it's a video game, like gameplay moment, visual thing, audio thing, whatever it may be, right into beyond.com with this as well. Jay said, That one thing has been one of my favorite newer segments on the show, and I think something that stuck with me really qualifies. Anyway, 2013 was a great year between The Last of Us, GTA 5, and of course BioShock Infinite. This was my first BioShock game, but I absolutely loved it. One of the things I loved about the game is that Elizabeth would search the environment with you and toss items at you. Whenever she would find coins, there would be a sharp ring and the coin would reflect beautifully in the sunlight as she tossed it, especially in the remaster. The animation, sound, and visual effect made it so that after 40 hours of being tossed coins, I still wouldn't tire out. Thank you so much for reading this and beyond. And yeah, I remember that was sort of a meme thing of like book or catch, and that would just constantly interrupt you, but I'm glad someone found joy in that moment.
We shot a video with Courtney Taylor, who voiced Elizabeth in BioShock, where we did the book or catch thing, and we fluck her coins, and like it was awesome.
So
do you guys remember like the dev breakdown of that game about how they clocked the speed that Elizabeth would have to be running at like 40 miles an hour because she's always basically like ahead of you or trailing you, but you're playing like a fast-paced first-person shooter. And so like characters in FPS games basically run at like 30 miles an hour. So Elizabeth is just constantly like, which I love that so much.
That's such a wonderful like intersection of like games are art, but also games are games. And it's like, we're like, yeah, here's like a weird dissection of like America and racism and dystopia, but also like you're eating a pineapple out of the garbage can. Why not?
Or the toilet.
I always loved John Ryan's story from when he went to go Ben team about Days Gone. Here's our beautifully realized version of the Pacific Northwest, but also to make your motorcycle work, we had to invisibly erase half of a car, put it on top of your motorcycle, which is secretly a car, and let you ride that. And just like the funny tricks that have to happen to make games work sometimes is incredible. And thank you for sharing why that moment meant so much to you, Jay. And of course, if you have that one thing, remember, right in the comments, reading those every week. But I think that pretty much wraps us up for this week. Is there anything you guys have been working on coming out this week that you want to promote? I know you guys both mentioned the Animal Crossing and Bloodborne, what they have in common video last week, which is live now, correct?
Yep. We're doing a new show tomorrow with the IGN Entertainment team. It's basically like a watch from home party where you can watch a movie along with us. You'll have to rent it, but it's The Invisible Man, and we'll have the director coming on, and we're doing a full 2-hour watch through with commentary and everything like that. And the other thing is I shot a conversation with Jeremy today. We put up the video. We're putting up the video tomorrow, I think. Just sort of about how our buying habits have changed during the COVID quarantine, how physical collectors may have to go digital for a little while or wait it out, and just, sort of like what physical video game sales could mean and could be impacted by everything that's happening right now. And in much brighter news, Max and I are working on bringing back Up at Noon in some capacity because the world needs some idiot nonsense right now. And so hopefully we get to do that very soon.
Yeah, we'll have the updates on that whenever we get the details on when it's happening. But it's going to be just like it used to be, live, hour-long, unscripted as hell, and us probably just playing with our dolls in real time and getting silly. I also shot a little unboxing. McFarlane Toys sent me a bunch of Mortal Kombat and Spawn action figures, as well as this bitchin' Skyrim draft. But I just, shot a little video in my basement in which I play with some dolls. So I will get that up soon, but keep an eye out.
Awesome. And then for me, going up this Thursday, you can read my review of the first Control DLC expansion, the Foundation. I reviewed the original base game, and I'm now on tap for the DLC. I can mention in a preview version the first opening mission or so, and I really like it. And if you liked Control, you'll like what I've played so far of the DLC, but stay tuned for my full review. But yeah, other than that, obviously we're live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific at beyond.ign.com, youtube.com/IGNBeyond, whatever podcast services you listen to us on. Please rate, subscribe, review, whatever. It always helps the show out, whatever you can do on all those services. And we hope you've been enjoying the show. Remember, please play Infamous Second Son. We'll be discussing it sort of as this month wraps up, as the new month begins, and sort of looking back at PS4 exclusives. Let us know what PS4 exclusive you next want us to jump into. We have a few in mind, but always open to suggestions. And otherwise, thank you so much, Brian and Max, for joining me for this episode. Thank you to Red, our producer, for this episode. And thank you to everyone listening. And we hope you're safe. We hope you're well. And as always, beyond.
Come on and ride it, pony.